or afternoon, depending on where you are. Thank you for joining me today for this live. We're going to be talking about correct form for squats and deadlifts. Oh, excuse me, I forgot to turn off the sound on my computer so I can see you guys in the chat here and easily respond to your messages. So let me know if you're here, say hello, or if you're watching the replay later on, let me know that you're watching. If you have any questions as we go through these tips on squats and deadlifts today, drop them in the comments and we'll get to them as we go along and circle back at the end and answer some more questions. So if you have any specific questions about kettlebell training in general, let me know as we go. Hi, EV Warrior, thanks for joining. And you're welcome. I hope this is going to be a helpful live for many of you out there today. Now, why squats and deadlifts? Why am I doing a live on squats and deadlifts? Well, squats and deadlifts are some of the most common strength training exercises, as you likely know if you're watching this. And they are very important when it comes to kettlebell training because sometimes squats and deadlifts or squats and hinging exercises get confused, and there is a bit of a difference in what muscle groups are being emphasized and the ways in which you use your deadlifts or hinges and squats to progress to different exercises. They're going to be slightly different from squat to deadlift. So it's important to know the difference between the two and to have a solid deadlift and squat because they are such great exercises for training. Well, they train the whole body, but specifically the lower body, and they're going to really help with some of the more advanced kettlebell exercises that you may be doing, or for kettlebell solo training, they're going to matter, especially for different leg circle exercises that we do. So I'm going to talk about some things that I think are important to know. We're going to break down each one of them and talk about maybe some common errors. We'll talk about how they apply to different exercises. I'll talk about some of the things that have helped me with my squats and deadlifts, because even though I've been doing squats and deadlifts and strength training since I was in high school, it even took until just a few years ago for there to be some key tips and techniques for me to use that help me to really better understand squats and deadlifts. So I want to share some of those with you today. And before we even talk about specific squat and deadlift form, I want to talk about an exercise that I have talked about before on some of my lives, and if you've done any kettlebell solo classes or you've looked at any of my kettlebell solo content, then you may already know this exercise, and it's very, very important for squats and deadlifts. It's called the pelvic tilt. It also happens to be really important for lower back health, for connecting with your lower abdominals. Now, I think this is really important to learn and to understand how to do before doing squats or deadlifts, because when you're doing squats or deadlifts, it's important to understand what your pelvis position should be. It's going to prevent your lower back from getting sore. It's going to help you better activate the muscles that you want to be using in these exercises. So the pelvic tilt, it's as simple as it sounds. All you do is you tilt your pelvis back and forth. So essentially you take your pelvis through the range of motion that it can do back and forth. And the idea here that's important is that you're not just arching your whole back to do this, and you're not squeezing your glutes to do it. So you're using the muscles of your lower back to lift up the back of your pelvis, and then you're using your lower abdominal muscles to tuck under. So my glutes are actually relaxed as I tuck under. Now, this is important, again, because this is going to help you better set up your position when you're doing squats and deadlifts. And it's a very subtle movement. There isn't a ton of range of motion in the pelvis here, so it's subtle, but it's really worth the time to do. So using this as a warm-up. Now, if you want to join me and do a few reps to help yourself warm up before we do any squats and deadlifts, then go for it. If you haven't done this before, you may feel a bit of a burn in your lower abdominals. You want to think about just about 10% effort, like you're not contracting 100% trying to lift up your pelvis or trying to contract here. You're trying to think gentle, 10%. Sometimes if we contract really hard, we actually bypass some of these deeper core muscles that we want to be using, and the hip flexors and the glutes start taking over, those bigger, stronger muscle groups. And if we contract gently, we can actually tap into some areas that wouldn't normally get the chance to do the work. Okay, so pelvic tilt, that's going to be really important, and we're going to talk about why as we go along through our squats and hinges. Okay, so first of all, the deadlift. Now, let me show you the deadlift, just in case anybody doesn't know what the deadlift is. Okay, so the deadlift is, this is kind of your conventional deadlift here. Okay, tapping the kettlebell to the floor and standing up. Okay, when I say a hip hinge, I simply mean a similar action with the legs, like this, okay? So that could also be done in different stances. So you could also hinge with one leg back. You could hinge with a very wide stance with legs straight, okay? There's different types of hinges. Excuse me. So this is really important because it carries over to many other kettlebell exercises, especially if you want to get into more advanced kettlebell exercises like the swing. Okay, if you want to do cleans, if you want to do snatches, if you want to do windmills, all of these more advanced exercises require a solid understanding of the hip hinge. Okay, and so when we do a hip hinge, what we're thinking about is pushing the booty back, keeping, I call it a flat back, but it's not quite a flat back. You can see there's a little bit of an arch in my back. The main thing that we want to think about here, and this is where that pelvis position comes into play, is we want to have kind of an equal balance of engagement of the lower back and the lower abs. So that means we're not here sticking the booty way out because this is going to overemphasize the lower back. And we're also not here with a rounded spine because this is going to in some ways activate your core potentially, but also place additional stretch on the lower back there. So we want to find a middle ground, okay, where you're engaging your lower abs like you did on this pelvic tilt. You have a little bit of that engagement, but you're also still sticking your booty out. So there's an equal balance here to ensure you're not overloading your lower back, okay? So you want to have that engagement in the pelvis. And generally, as you come forward, you want to think of your shoulders are going to come over your toes as your booty reaches out behind you, okay? And then how low you go on a hinge is going to depend on your range of motion and what you want to target. Generally, I would say the safest depth to hinge to is keeping the shoulders above the hips, or at the very lowest, shoulders in line with the hips. Once you start going lower than that, it's going to be a bit of a compromised position for your lower back. And again, it may depend. If you're really flexible and you're working on certain specific flexibility things, maybe you want to go lower than that. But for strength training, we generally want to keep the shoulders at or above hip level, okay? Now, let me know in the comments if you know what muscle groups are most targeted by a hip hinge or deadlift movement. Drop it in the comments if you have a guess there. And also, while you're at it, guess which muscle groups are more targeted by a squatting pattern. Let me know what you think in the comments. Jintu, thanks for your comment. I'll get to that in a few minutes. Okay, so the next thing for our hip hinge, something that can be really helpful to make sure that you have the correct back position is if you get a staff, a stick, or a broomstick. You may have seen this before. This is a pretty common drill to use, but it can be very useful, is thinking of bringing this stick so it's touching the back of your head, the back of your shoulders, and your booty, and then maintaining that connection as you go into your hinge. Okay, so this is a really useful drill, and if you have trouble maintaining those 3 points of connection, then this would be a good drill to practice until you're able to figure out how to keep everything connected. Now again, even as you're doing this, you want to think of a little bit of a gentle tuck under of the pelvis to engage that lower abdomen. Okay, so that's a great way to practice or check that you've got the right back position. And then, you know, it's great to practice just doing your hip hinge without a weight, without a kettlebell, because this is going to help you understand whether you're using the right muscle groups. Because, I don't know if anybody guessed here, okay, EV Warrior guessed glutes, hamstrings, quads, hips, lower back. Absolutely, those work in both squats and deadlifts. I would say that deadlift is going to emphasize your glutes and your hams, okay? So that's going to be kind of the main emphasis of the deadlift, but there is absolutely supporting work happening, especially from the lower abs and core, the hip flexors, etc. Okay, so we want to feel, as we push out of this position, ideally we're feeling glutes, we're feeling hams, okay? And then at the top, we may also squeeze our quads, our booty, and our core is engaged here, okay? One of the best ways that I've found to better feel the engagement of the deadlift, even with body weight or with a very light kettlebell, is to go slow. I like to do a 4-count tempo. So that would be 4 counts down. So you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, 3, 2, 1. Now it's important that as you go down, that you're not just relaxing everything or yielding to gravity. You're actually engaging. Okay, so one way that you can do that I like to tell my students is a way that they can help themselves engage more to learn what's working on the deadlift. Push the feet outward into the floor. So you can just try that while you're standing. So push your feet into the floor and then push them outward without moving them. And all points of your feet are still connected into the floor, but you go outward, okay? You're gonna automatically start to feel more engagement of the legs and glutes, okay? You can keep that outward push as you lower down, and also think of engaging your core and your hip flexors as you lower down, okay? Nice and slow, and then keep that outward push. You're really gonna feel your booty as you stand back up, okay? So this might not necessarily be the outward push of the feet might not necessarily be something you use if you were lifting really heavy on a deadlift, if you're a power lifter. But it's a great technique to use to better understand what muscles are activating when you're learning the deadlift, when you're learning how to activate and use the muscles that you want to be using, which again are mostly your glutes and your hamstrings. Okay, so let's try that again, that 4-count tempo deadlift, and I want you to think of push your feet into the floor and push outward, okay? I encourage you to join me here to give it a try so you know what I'm talking about and you can understand what sensation you should be feeling, okay? So push down into the floor, push outward, and slowly 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, 3, 2, 1. We'll do it 5 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, 3, 2, 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, 3, 2, 3, 1. 2, 3, 4, 4, 3, 2, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, 3, 2, 5. I guarantee if you practice with a slow tempo, you're going to feel muscles working and engaging better than you have previously. So that was one of the biggest things that helped me just a few years ago better understand how to actually use my glutes on a deadlift, which is super, super important because if you're not really using your glutes, you're gonna end up feeling your deadlifts in your lower back and getting a sore lower back, which is not very comfortable. Now, it's normal for the deadlift to work your lower back a little bit, but ideally we're focusing the work on the legs. Okay, so let me think about if there's anything else I want to tell you on the deadlift. I think one of the main things to keep in mind with the deadlift is to have that lower abdominal activation, because if you go down like this and you just completely kind of relax your abs, like if I'm engaged, I'm here, and if I relax, you can kind of see the difference. Like if I relax, I kind of dump into my lower back a little bit, which again, the deadlift works your lower back, but if it's the main place you're sore, then you likely need an adjustment in technique. The main place we want to be sore, booty, hamstrings, okay? So I highly recommend practicing your deadlift with a slow tempo, especially if you've never practiced that before, and also working on different stances for your deadlift. Okay, so it can be really useful to understand, to better understand the deadlift, to work it in different stances. So you have kind of a neutral square stance here. This is your typical deadlift position that you might use. You could also do a narrow square, so feet together, okay? That's a great one to work. You can practice a wide square stance, okay? You can also work your deadlift with straight legs, okay? So engaging the quadriceps and working here, and you don't necessarily have to go all the way to the ground, but this is another great way to really emphasize your hamstrings and your glutes with a straight leg deadlift. And then I highly encourage working stagger stance deadlift. So this is not often done. People often do like a kickstand deadlift, but a stagger stance where both feet are flat on the ground and you're working your deadlift, this can be a great way to strengthen your legs in a different way. Okay, I highly encourage trying that. And of course, a kickstand deadlift is great as well, where you shift most of your weight to the front foot, but it's a little bit more advanced. Let me take a look at the chat here. Afia, unfortunately, I can't read your question. Maybe you could translate it for me, and then I'd be happy to answer. Jintu, you had a question here, how to increase your stamina. You're in your 5th month of the gym, but not able to lift more. So that question, well, it's a little bit hard for me to answer because I don't know what you're doing exactly, Jintu. You could tell me what are you doing when you're at the gym, because 5 months, you're still just in the starting phases. So in the first 5 months, I wouldn't really focus so much on trying to increase your weight all the time. That's only one way that you can progress. I would really recommend focusing on your form, focusing on trying different stances like I was showing, and just really getting into a better connection with your body. It's more important to stay consistent with your exercise in the first 6 to 12 months than it is to try to progress or to really push the weight, because you increase your risk of injury and burnout by just trying to push that progress too fast. First, you just want to establish a foundation and a baseline. So Jintu, I would say just keep working and try to focus on just being consistent. And then later down the road, you can focus more on increasing the weight. But really increasing the weight is just one way to progress. You can also change your rest time. You can change the volume that you're doing. You can change the level of challenge of the exercise to make the exercise itself more challenging. You can increase your time under your time under tension, like with the tempo that I was showing. So there's many different ways you can progress besides weight. And I would encourage looking into that, and also recognizing that little progress is progress. So if we only measure our progress by numbers over time, we're likely going to be disappointed, because at a certain point in time we get old and then we struggle more too. You're not necessarily always going to get stronger. So finding different metrics that you can measure your progress by besides just the weight is important. Okay, if you guys have any other questions, let me know. Let's talk about squats. If you have questions, more questions about deadlift, drop them in the comments and I can answer those specifically. So squats, we're going to talk about squats next. So a squat, as opposed to a hinge, okay, where we're here, the squat is where we're going to do more of a knee bend, and we're going to keep our chest up. Okay, so there's that squat. There's also like a split squat when you're in a split squat. I'm just fumbling over my words today. Split squat, where you're in a split stance for your squat. So squats, let me know if you have a guess as to what is targeted more in a squat as opposed to the hinge or the deadlift. So for the hinge or the deadlift, it's mostly targeting your glutes and your hamstrings. Let me know if you have any guesses on the squats. EV Warrior, I see you have a question. How much bend should you have in the knees during a deadlift? That's actually a great question. Thank you for asking that. So on a deadlift, how much knee bend should you have? There's different ways to do it. I am very much, I don't like dogma. I don't like telling people this is the one way to do things. I think there's many ways to do things. And for a deadlift, there could be a varying range of how much you bend your knees. So how much you bend your knees is going to be dependent on what type of deadlift you're doing, whether you're doing a bent knee or a straight leg deadlift, and it's going to depend on your flexibility, because if you're not very flexible, so if your hamstrings aren't very flexible and you try to just do a slight knee bend, what's going to happen when you reach the end of your hamstring flexibility is you're going to need to use your back. You're going to need to use your back to get down there, okay? So if you have less flexible hamstrings, you're going to want to do more of a knee bend in the deadlift, okay? So I can do quite a big knee bend in the deadlift. It could be even similar to a squat or just a little higher, but the difference is my shoulders are over my toes versus in the squat, my chest is up, okay? So if you are more flexible, so I'm pretty flexible, I could do a slight knee bend and I could keep my back pretty flat all the way down. So I could do that. That would be more of a like hamstring and lower back focused deadlift. The straighter I keep my legs here, or I could opt to get that initial stretch on my hamstrings. Once the bell kind of reaches my knees, I'm going to drop and bend through my knees to get to the floor. Okay, so if I would say the difference is if you're doing a heavier weight, something that's heavier for you, I would do a bigger knee bend because you're better able to use all the muscle groups in your legs to help you. Versus if you're going to be doing either straight leg or just a little knee bend all the way down, this would likely be something you would do with just a light to moderate weight because it is a little bit more taxing on the lower back and you got to keep your core engaged. So let me know if that answered your question. Appreciate you dropping in, YouTube Punk. I see, Tad, you've got a question. Hi, what are the best workouts if someone wanted to mix kettlebell with a barbell for a basic program? I don't have a specific outline that I could give you for that, but you could absolutely combine kettlebells and barbells. My recommendation would be to do 2 to 3 workouts a week. For basics, I would focus on just like the basic exercises. So deadlifts, squats, maybe a row, like a bent row with either kettlebells or deadlifts, kettlebells or barbells, and then like a pushing exercise. So either a chest press or an overhead press if you have the flexibility, or a push-up. Those are some great exercises that you can do. If you have a more specific question for me, I can better answer, but it's a bit hard for me I can't just like write you out a program in the middle of the live because that would be irresponsible and I don't want to do that. Okay, EV Warrior, you said for squats, I'd say a little more quads, a little less hamstring as opposed to deadlift. Absolutely. Yep. Squats are going to be more quads and less hamstrings because our hamstrings are not in this stretched position. It's not going to be as focused on the hamstrings. It's going to be more focused on our quads and glutes in the squat. Okay, so for the squat, one thing that can come up here for many is perhaps range of motion challenges. So I would say more so than a deadlift, we're probably going to have range of motion challenges in the squat because it does require a decent amount of ankle flexibility, like ankle dorsiflexion, your ability for your knees to kind of push forward over your toes. That's going to limit your squat, as well as perhaps any knee pain or discomfort you have. Also hip flexibility. These are all going to come into play. Also your upper back flexibility, because if you don't have a very flexible, if you're kind of stuck in this position, your squat position is going to get more difficult as well. So those are some things to consider, and there's adjustments you can make if you struggle with the flexibility of your ankles, hips, knees, etc. So one thing that you can do is you can elevate your, if you struggle with ankle mobility, you can elevate your heels. So if you have a slant board, or you can just slide like weight plates or something under your heels, that can help make the flexibility a little bit easier for your ankles. As far as knee pain, or any pain or discomfort, I would recommend adjusting your range of motion. So people, there's a lot of messaging out there that if you don't go ass to grass, which is what they call it, if you go all the way down to the ground and back up, then it's not a good squat. I disagree with that, especially if we're training strength. I do think it can be useful and important to work towards a deeper range of motion for your flexibility, but for your strength, you can get plenty of strength work by doing a half squat, especially if you do it slow, especially if you maybe do holds in your half squat position, you are definitely still going to be working your legs. So if you're experiencing any knee pain, decreasing the range of motion can be a big one. Also, reducing how much of your body weight you're doing on the squat. And so one way you can do that is by holding on to something, whether that's, if you have a stall bar, you can use a stall bar to help you. But if you don't have a stall bar, you could use something like a staff or a couple of chairs, okay, where you can essentially set up the staff that you can reduce some of your body weight as well as reduce the range of motion on that squat, because we want to be squatting pain-free. I would never recommend forcing through pain. It's just not a good idea. You have a relationship with your body, and if you think about any relationship you have, whether it's with another person or whether it's with an activity, if you force something, it usually doesn't go anywhere good. So make sure that you're listening to your body and adjusting an exercise for your needs. Just because you're not going as low doesn't mean it's not effective for you and where you're at. And sometimes you need to regress in order to progress. So sometimes reducing the range of motion on an exercise like a squat, sometimes just working here in this upper range can actually start to build the strength that will allow you to go a little bit lower pain-free. So don't think about it as, I'm weaker for doing less range of motion. No, you're working with your body and working with where you're at and building towards something in the future. So everything that I teach within the classes and programs I offer in Kettlebell Solo, which is my main form of coaching these days, is about working with where you're at now and thinking about the long run. Not thinking about, well, I want to be able to do this tomorrow. It's like, the process doesn't end tomorrow, right? You want to think about 10 years down the road, where do you want to be? And does forcing or pushing through pain help you get there or prevent you from getting there? So having kind of that approach, I think, is really useful and healthy for your training. The other thing about a squat is sometimes a bodyweight squat can be a little bit more difficult than when you add a weight, say a kettlebell, because the weight of the kettlebell is going to help you kind of counterbalance and sit into your squat, okay? It's going to prevent you from feeling like you're falling backwards. That's definitely the case for me. I feel like I feel more balanced in my squat with a kettlebell than I do without the kettlebell. That's okay. It's normal. Can also be related to some flexibility and mobility stuff. So for the squat, especially with your kettlebell, if you're doing a goblet squat, rather than keeping the kettlebell really close to your chest, which is going to give you the tendency to drop your chest forward, you're going to think about pushing the kettlebell out and away from the chest. Added bonus, it works your arms and your core. And then sitting your butt back, engaging your lower abs here and keeping your chest up. Okay, so that's going to be our difference from the deadlift, is we're keeping that chest up. And yes, we're working the quads and glutes more. Now, similarly for a squat, just like the deadlift, you can work it in different stances. You could do a narrow square squat. You can work on a wide square squat. You can work on different split squats here or closer together, like a kickstand squat. All of those are great variations to practice. And for some people, this style of squat may actually be less comfortable than working like a split squat where you're kind of focusing more on one leg than the other. Or at least the pressure on your joints, muscles, tendons is different here. So you may find that that one feels better or worse for you. So let me know if you guys have questions on the squat. Hi, Abby. Thanks for joining. Let me know if you have any questions on squats or deadlifts today. So, as I mentioned, squats and deadlifts are important because they help, well, first they help you build the foundational strength for other things that you want to do. Great way to train your lower body. They train your upper body somewhat as well, of course, less focused, but great exercises to set your foundation, and they're going to help you build the strength to do more advanced kettlebell exercises. So the most obvious example there from a deadlift, what does this help you prepare for? It helps you prepare for the kettlebell swing. Okay, so that's going to help you get ready for being in that position, but in a quicker, more dynamic way. So I highly recommend building up your strength with deadlifts before starting to do the kettlebell swing because it is a more complex exercise. The squat is also going to help you build strength for the swing, and both of those help you build strength for cleans, snatches, other typical exercises. In kettlebell solo, what we progress to from our squats and deadlifts are different leg circle exercises, which are a great way to train your entire body, especially your legs. So one of the exercises we do is called a shin circle. So you would use your deadlift position and you circle that kettlebell around your shin. A great isometric training of this position. Again, a great way to prepare your body for something more complex like swings. We also do figure eights with weight shifts. Okay, and again, these can also be done in a split stance. Okay, you can do here. Lots of different ways to do shin circles and figure eights. And then we have our squat variation of leg circles would be our thigh rainbows, our thigh circles, our thigh figure eights. Okay, so our thigh rainbow is just going up and over the top. We also do thigh circles. Okay, so we're using more of a squat position on this exercise, as well as we do thigh circle figure eights. Okay, and then again, these also, we do them in a split squat position here. And then we have an exercise that combines hinging and squatting, which is called the shin thigh eight. So you would go from kind of your hinge position, drop into a squat, back into your hinge, drop into a squat. Okay, another great exercise to train your entire body. Hi, Aaron. Thanks for joining. Evie Warrior question, weight should still be centered at the center of foot or heels in the squat? Okay, that's a good question. So for the squat, where should your weight be in your foot? I would say your weight should be towards, like you want weight in your heels because as you push up and out of the squat, that's going to help you engage your glutes more, but not so far into your heels that you start to feel like you're gonna fall backwards. So you're still gonna have weight in your midfoot and your toes are still gonna be down, but your weight is gonna be towards your heels on both the squat and the deadlift. Abhishek had a question, how to add stamina workout with strength training. Well, you can add higher rep ranges or higher times, like go for longer. So rather than just doing, if you're focusing on your strength and building up strength with heavier weights, you're going to want to do lower reps with longer rest period. If you want to build up your stamina or endurance, you're going to want to do shorter rest periods with more reps. Abby has a question, should deadlifts be maximized for loading 1 rep maxes? How many reps should deadlift contain per set? So this depends, Abby, on what you're training for. Should you do a 1 rep max? This depends on your goals. I don't recommend 1 rep max for people who are just trying to stay fit and healthy. The risk increases the more you push yourself the higher you get towards your maximum, because you're riding that line between your best performance and an injury. So I don't recommend 1 rep max because I believe it's a lot riskier. That being said, if that really motivates you to train for your strength, there absolutely are ways to do it. And if you're, say, like a power lifter, then you obviously are training towards a 1 rep max. But I would not program that for my students because I don't think it's necessary to improve your strength. In terms of the rep range, it depends. Could be from 3 to 20. I generally probably wouldn't go much higher than 20 unless, again, somebody was training for something very specific that required that. But maybe 20 is something that would help you build your endurance versus if you're working in the 3 to 6 rep range, you're probably going to be working more of your strength. And then between that, between 6 and 20, you could be working kind of a range of some strength, some endurance. So you could do different rep ranges. It depends, and it's also a matter of just how something is programmed or your personal preference. Generally, many of our workouts are going to have in the range of 8 to 10 deadlifts. Okay, EV Warrior, you got another question for the deadlift. Do you cue to keep the triceps tight to the lats? A common mistake that I see is them having a huge gap at the armpits. So you're talking about like if they keep the bell like out in front of them or something rather than like tight like this. It's not something that I don't coach tricep tight to the lats, but I do coach that you want to engage your upper back a little bit, right? So when you're doing that, setting up for that deadlift, you do want to think about kind of activating your lats a little bit by just pulling your shoulders down gently. But I don't necessarily coach anything too much more than that unless, again, it kind of depends on the person and what each person needs. So if I'm coaching form, ideally I'm coaching somebody specifically because the most helpful you can be is actually coaching specifically what's going on with one person. Giving a general guideline like I'm doing now probably isn't quite as helpful as getting that specific technique advice. You're welcome, Abhishek. Any other questions that you guys have specifically on squats or deadlifts? Let me know. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I wanted to tell you guys about squats and deadlifts. I think it's important with regards to like when people have questions about how they should train their squats and deadlifts, how often should they train them, how many reps, how many sets. First of all, it depends on where you're at in your training journey. So if you are new to training, I would say don't worry too much about all those specifics. Just be concerned about getting consistent with your exercise. And if it's confusing to try to figure out what you should be doing, then joining a training program, joining, either getting a training program or joining a membership or something, or joining a gym where you can get the programming for you so you don't have to worry about that. That's going to be a lot easier than trying to figure out how much you should be doing. But again, I think just doing exercise consistently is the most important when you're first starting. And then as you get a little further along the road, you could get a little more specific if you have certain goals that you want to meet with regards to your endurance or your strength or your conditioning, etc. And you could start tailoring those things to where you're at. And if you're more advanced and further down the road, you are either need to have a good grasp of what you're doing with your programming, or you have a coach that helps you to get there. Hi, Jez. Thanks for joining. Okay, EV Warriors question. How about breathing? Exhale in the concentric. So, yes, I would say with a deadlift and a squat, you're going to exhale through, we would call the sticking point, the more difficult part of the lift. So you're going to inhale as you go down on the deadlift, exhale as you stand up. Okay, similar with the squat, you're going to inhale down, exhale up, but this also depends on if you're doing, so for example in kettlebell solo, we do a lot of slow tempo training, so 4 counts down, 4 counts up, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, 3, 2, 1. It doesn't necessarily make sense to inhale or exhale for 4 whole counts. So in that case, I would just breathe evenly and throughout the exercise. You don't necessarily need to be holding your breath for it. Again, this breathing maybe becomes more specific if you're lifting very heavy, but that's not generally what I would recommend for general health and fitness. You don't need to be lifting super heavy. You don't need to be super concerned about exactly what the breathing pattern looks like. I think the most important thing is that you're getting enough air in that you're able to regulate your heart rate. You're welcome, Urbis2405. Let me know if you have any other questions. Geraldine said here, since doing slow tempo, which you teach, I'm enjoying deadlifts much more and learning how the body engages. Absolutely. So you missed it earlier. I was talking about that because that's actually one of the best things that I've done to better understand how to do deadlifts correctly is in the last 4 years, having started doing slow tempo training. It's been a game changer for me with feeling the engagement and better understanding how to get the most out of my deadlifts and squats. So highly recommend if you have not tried doing slow tempo. I usually like to do 4 counts down, 4 counts up, but you could do, 4 counts down, 2 counts up, 2 counts down, 4 counts. There's lots of different tempos you could use, but experimenting with tempos I think is a great way to improve your mind-muscle connection, which has a lot of really great benefits for your training and for your understanding of your body. You're welcome, EV Warrior. Let me know if you have any additional questions. Thanks for your questions. Any other questions about deadlifts, squats, kettlebell training, or anything else? I am going to be coming on here tomorrow at 4:30 p.m. and we're going to be doing a kettlebell jerk tutorial. So if you want to know more about that, or if you don't know what that is but you're curious, join tomorrow at 4:30 p.m. Pacific time. It's tomorrow, October 17th. And let me know if you guys have suggestions of anything you want to see on a live next week, because I usually decide that on Thursday or Friday. So tomorrow or the next day I'm going to be deciding my live topics, and if you have specific requests, that does factor heavily into what I choose for the topics. So with regards to that slow tempo, if you guys want to know, one of my favorite exercises to do slow tempo, it would be a split squat, slow tempo split squat. So this is like major burn. So you probably want to start either without a kettlebell or just a few reps, but here's what it looks like. It's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so killer, even if you just do like 5 reps. If you do it body weight, really great way to solidify your connection to your legs and to get a great burn, but and good work on the legs, but it doesn't make you as sore as lifting very heavy or doing like really high volume. So the great part about that is you're really strengthening your legs and your connection to the muscles, but you don't get as sore as you would. I can't guarantee you won't be sore because if you do a lot of reps the first time through, which I don't recommend, just do a few reps the first time, you could be sore. But if you just do a few reps and you kind of progress it in a way that's appropriate for your level, you won't be very sore, but your legs will definitely feel stronger. And that's something that's important is, especially for any of us as we age, to choose the exercises that are efficient at helping us improve without really tiring us out too much, because we want to have energy for life. So we want to train in a way that gives us energy for life and still allows us to reap the benefits of that training. Slow tempo training is great for that because you don't need a lot of weight to really feel it and to get the benefit from it. Okay, Abby, you want to know about training to failure. You're interested in that as a topic. Okay, I will add that to the list. Thank you for your request. Geraldine, let me answer your question in just a moment here. Let me find my YouTube Live Ideas list. So does it matter if the knee goes over the toes? That's a great question. So for the squat in particular, there has been over the years a misconception that if your knees go over your toes, it's bad for your knees and that your knees will just like break and it'll be horrible and you'll be in pain, right? So that bringing your knees like this over your toes is really unhealthy. That is not necessarily true. Now, if you have pain while doing it or discomfort, it may not be right for you. But actually, if we have a good amount of ankle flexibility, it shouldn't be an issue to let the knee come over the toe. So if you're doing a split squat and you're pushing your knee over your toe and that does not bother your knee, and it feels good and you're feeling your legs work, it's actually a healthy way to build your strength and your mobility in that position. So your knees can absolutely come over your toes. And again, I would say pay attention to the signals your body is sending you first and foremost to figure out if that's right for you. And also, if you've never done the exercise that way, you don't just want to go into it and do 20 reps like that, because that might be too much for your body. I think sometimes people confuse, they say an exercise is bad when maybe they just did the exercise in a way that was not progressive or healthy for them at that point in time. So there's whether the exercise is good for you at all, or whether it's good for you in a little dose or a medium dose or a large dose, those could all be factors in there. So knees over toes is okay if it feels good for you and if you progress it in the correct manner that's appropriate for your level. Okay, Abby, explain the tempo one more time. So doing a slow tempo is a way to increase your time under tension. So it's another way to progress an exercise that makes it more difficult without changing anything else. So there's different tempos you could do. So if you're doing just like a regular tempo, this might just be like a 1 or 2 second down, 1 or 2 second up. Okay, then you could also do, for example, a 3 count down, 1, 2, 3, 1 up, 1, 2, 3, 1 second up. Okay, there's different tempos you can do. A tempo I really like to do that I think is very effective is a 4 count down, 4 count up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, 3, 2, 1. So why this is effective is because your muscles are under tension for a longer period of time. Okay, so then they're having to work for a longer period of time. Other reasons why it's effective is it helps improve your mind-body connection. It may help you better understand what is engaged during a certain exercise, which is really important and helps you to get the most from the exercises and from your training. So let me know if that makes sense, Abby, or if you have a follow-up question on that. Lisa, you asked, have you done anything about fat loss, exercise, general nutrition, etc.? Did I do one? I feel like I might have done something on fat loss. In general, my recommendations for that, I don't give specific nutrition recommendations because I am not a nutritionist. It's outside of my scope. I don't have any official education on that besides my own research and experience. So I can share some of my own experience, but I don't give specific guidelines on that, which is the most important thing for fat loss. So the most important thing is to look at your nutrition. That's going to be the biggest factor in that. Of course, it is important to give yourself, exercise can be helpful, but you don't necessarily need to exercise for fat loss. So giving anything specific there with regards to nutrition is kind of outside of my scope, but I have done a live where we talk about general guidelines of fat loss. Let me see if I did that here or if I did that. I know I've done it, but whether I did it on YouTube is a good question. I think I did. Let's see. I did talk about the best type of exercise for fat loss, as well as how I changed my body composition by working out less. So, Lisa, if you want to check that out there, that's the best type of exercise for fat loss, and then how I changed my body composition by working out less. Yeah, I could do a live on hypertrophy. I could definitely do that. Abby, your question, what about maintaining the tempo during the higher reps? Should I just use a metronome to keep the reps together? You know, I don't think you necessarily need to do tempo training beyond like 10 reps. I think if you do 10 reps of a tempo, that's great. Well, what I do is my students just watch my videos and my classes and programs, and I count it for them, so you don't have to count, and that way you don't have to set up a metronome. But if I do it myself, I just count it out. I don't go higher than 10 reps. I don't think it's really necessary for slow tempo. Any other questions or suggestions for future lives? You guys have great questions, thank you. And good suggestions too. I appreciate it. I've added those suggestions to the list about training to failure and hypertrophy, fat loss. Any other follow-up questions on deadlifts or squats? Something I'm also thinking about doing is running lives on the Kettlebell Solo channel that are like doing live workouts over there. So let me know if you'd be interested in that. It'd probably start by just like once a week. We'd do that over there. Have to figure out the best time, of course, that would work for people, but we'd be doing just different Kettlebell Solo workouts. You guys could get an idea of how to work slow tempo or 4-count tempo into your training, how we use different leg circles, like some of the ones that I demonstrated in our classes, and how we incorporate deadlifts and squats, because we do a lot of different stances versus, you know, in many strength training programs, you'll just kind of see that neutral square position, feet right under the hips, about hip width apart, and that's where you always do your squats. We do a range of different stances and different tempos, because we think it's important to vary the stances. Real life doesn't always just happen in a neutral square stance. You know, things happen in different positions, and you may need to have strength in a split stance as well. So important to train lots of different stances and not just one when we're training for life. Okay, that's the goal, really, is training for life. I don't know about you, but that's my goal. That's my goal for the students that I work with inside the Kettlebell Solo membership, to give them classes and programs that prepare them for life. So if they want to, you know, be able to get on the floor and play with their kids or their grandkids, if they want to be able to travel solo and feel confident, if they want to be able to rack their own luggage, if they want to be able to carry all the groceries inside at once, or you know, cut a rug at a wedding, that all those things ideally are possible, and that whatever physical training program you do supports you to do those things. Of course, if you have a specific goal beyond that, or for certain sports or performance things, that's awesome. But generally, you know, for many of us, the goal is just to stay fit for life and to train so that we can stay independent as we age and be able to try new physical activities as we get older. I think that's really the most important thing that your training routine does. So that's what I consider when I think about what type of training is most ideal for that. What type of training do I recommend? Because some styles of training aren't necessarily conducive to that, or maybe they take away from your ability to do your life. For example, if you're sore, like so sore you can barely walk for 5 days, that's really taking away from your life, from your ability to do life. It's not necessarily adding to it. So that's also something I consider for myself. You know, do I want to do a workout, you know, for 2 hours? It's going to make me tired for 3 days. That's not really going to help me get things done in my life. So focusing on what's the minimum effective dose that you can do that helps you still see that exciting progress in your body and in your strength without taking away from the things that you want to do in life. Thank you, Fran. Thanks for dropping by and saying hi. I so appreciate you saying that. Thanks for being here, and thanks, Fran, for being part of the Kettlebell Solo community. EV Warrior, yep, I have been interviewed by Liba Stark, I believe, twice on his channel, so I'm sure you can search that on YouTube and you will find it. Yes, Abby, like that. Exercise is for the body and not body for exercise. Yep, I also express it like train to live, don't live to train. Same idea as what you're saying. I think that's key for me. That one hits home because I used to live to train, and it brought me to an unhealthy place, not just physically, but mentally and spiritually. So finding a more balanced way where I'm training to live and training to support the things I want to do in my life, and that's been a much healthier way for me to train on all levels. So I think that's a number one thing to keep in mind. That is does the way that you train support your life, or is it taking away from your life? And if it's taking away from your life, then that's something to consider, maybe making some adjustments. I think I used to spend more time thinking about like what exact style of training is best for me, how can I progress. These days I spend less time thinking about all those specific details, and I just focus on being consistent in a way that feels good and trying to listen to my body and make adjustments as needed. Okay, maybe I've done a few too many workouts in a row. I need some stretching, I need some rest, I need some gentler activities, and kind of going based on more of intuition and understanding, what the messages my body is sending, because we could have the perfect training program set up, like the perfect volume, the perfect progression. It looks perfect on paper. It may not work for your life and your body in that season. So you could start applying it, but then something happens. You get sick. Are you going to just keep pushing through the program, or are you going to take the time off and rest? So all those little details, while they can add to maybe the fun of planning these things out, they're not really the main thing, in my opinion. The main thing is to stay consistent with exercise in the long run and to keep making progress, but also not to be too obsessed about exactly what that progress needs to look like, because life is usually just going to throw us a monkey wrench and it's going to look different than we thought. So Jez said when she attempted the split the thigh circles yesterday, felt the burn and was wobbling. You were worried that your legs would ache today, but surprisingly they don't. So you understand the theory behind solo. You will feel the burn, but you won't be super sore, which is the great part of doing like light to moderate weight, slower tempo, and some of these leg circle exercises that we do. Is you're going to feel the increase in strength, but you're not going to be as wrecked from a workout, which is really our goal. It's for you to be maybe a little sore or not sore at all. Hi Zafir, thanks for joining. How are you doing? Abby said you're into bodybuilding. That one quote keeps me awake from getting into too much stress about everything. Yeah. I think that's something to be cautious with bodybuilding, especially if you follow a lot of bodybuilders. Many bodybuilders have body dysmorphia and are very obsessed with their training. So it's important to keep that awareness in mind when you look at what they're doing, and to remember that, bodybuilding is cool and all, but it's not really the meaning of life, and to not get too obsessed and wrapped up into it where you start to get to an unhealthy place, because I know many former bodybuilders who have a lot of problems with their hormones, with their body image, with all kinds of stuff from just the culture of bodybuilding, and that it has a very obsessive nature. So that's definitely important. Yeah, Lana, I ignored your comment because if somebody calls me hi mommy, I'm generally gonna ignore it. It's a bit of a weird way to address somebody, so that's why I ignored your comment. Zafir's question, how many days have you been exercising? I usually exercise in some form every day, but it may look like just like a walk, or it may look like a little bit of stretching. I usually do a kettlebell workout between 1 to 3 days a week, and once a week I'm currently training my handstands. I'm working towards a freestanding handstand push-up. I'm doing that once a week, so that's once a week, which is body weight, and then I do 1 to 3 times a week of kettlebell training, and then on other days I'll walk Occasionally I'll go on a bike ride. I keep it pretty simple. Occasionally go on a hike. I need to be getting a little bit more into stretching and recovery work, so I'm making that a focus as well. Abby, you said you're also type 2 diabetic. That's definitely something that factors into that, of course. I don't know who Karina Ramil is. Do I look like her? Like, I guess I could kind of see it. Maybe she's got similar color hair than me. Yeah, Alana, I would prefer to just be called by my name. If you want to say hello, just hi Britt, hi KB Fit Britt. That works best for me. Any other questions on kettlebells, deadlifts, squats, or training in general? Reminder, tomorrow, 4:30 p.m. Pacific time, October 17th, we're going to be talking about the kettlebell jerk. We're going to do a tutorial on the kettlebell jerk. So if you're interested in that, or you don't know what it is and you want to know, join us tomorrow. If you have any other requests on lives you want to see next week, I'm going to be picking my topics tomorrow or Friday. I got a few good suggestions already, but if you have any other ones, let me know. Otherwise, my cat would like pets. So if you don't have any other questions, then the cats are going to get pets. There's one of them right there. That's the real cuddly one. Abby, you got a question about creatine. I personally have never taken creatine, but I do know that it's one of the safest supplements out there, is what I've read, is that it's very safe to take and that many people swear by it having a very positive effect on, their muscle growth and their energy levels. So I think, it's something that you could explore and see how it works for you and your body. I've personally never taken it because, one, I don't love taking a lot of supplements, but I have been on a bit of a supplement routine with working on some things with healing my gut health. So I don't really want to add other supplements. Plus, I don't really have an issue with building muscle. I feel like I build muscle quite easily, so I don't feel like, oh, I want to be even bigger than I am now. Like, I think I like my physique the way it is, and I don't feel like I want to necessarily make my muscles even bigger than they are. So that's kind of my factor into creatine. Olana asks, is creatine better or protein powder? Well, they're not the same thing. Protein powder, that's like whey protein versus creatine. It really depends, I think, on the quality you get. But I think creatine is probably going to have a bigger effect on, from what I understand, on your strength and your muscle mass. Again, I've never taken it. A lot of protein powders have a lot of crap in them. They're not very high quality. So you want to make sure you're getting a high quality protein powder. So if you're asking like a high quality creatine versus just a run-of-the-mill protein powder, I mean, I would recommend creatine even though I've never taken it. Many of those protein powders just have things that I think are not great for your gut. Geraldine asked, can you do the jerk holding double-handed like when beginners are taught the press? Wouldn't recommend because it is like a fast-paced exercise. What you could do is hold the kettlebell at your chest and kind of like get the leg action down. That could be something you could do, but I wouldn't like place a hand on the bell and try it because I think it's just a quicker exercise in the press. So probably wouldn't work super well. Thanks, Zephyr. Hi, Sierra Jidden. Thanks for joining. Abby, yeah, you said you're being thoughtful about it considering your diabetes. Yeah, I don't know how that would affect your diabetes. So it definitely would be something to do some research on because I don't know about that. But I think it's good that you're being thoughtful. I think it's always important to take some time to think about and consider before adding something into your routine, and also making sure that you're not changing too many things at once. So if there's something, if you're changing something with your workout routine, maybe not also adding a supplement on top, maybe giving yourself some time with that change in your workout routine before adding a different factor in. That way you better know if there's a positive or negative change, why that change is occurring. Devil presses. I honestly don't even know what a devil press is. But I have to look this up. I don't know what a devil press is. Is it like, please tell me this isn't like a burpee with a press. That's probably what it is, huh? Let's see if I can find an example of the devil press. Is it a burpee with a press? Let me tell you, I used to love burpees and all burpee variations. I even did a face-off burpee, like max burpee competition with my old boss at a gym I used to work at, or in my early 20s. I was all about burpees, but these days I don't do a lot of burpees. It's not that there's anything wrong with them per se. I just, from like my personal training routine, by that I mean like the way that I train myself, I don't do a lot of high intensity stuff because I'm still recovering, like hormonally and nervous system wise, from how hard I used to push myself, that doing a lot of high intensity training is difficult for me to recover from, and I can feel it doesn't, like my body doesn't really like it. So in that recovery stage, I don't prefer burpees, but I understand that you like them because I used to like that kind of exercise. I think it's not necessary to get in good shape, and it's more suffering than you need to do. But again, I understand that it feels good when you're done. Zafir, I don't stream every day. Currently, I stream 3 times a week. Mondays at 1 p.m. Pacific time, Wednesdays at 9 a.m. Pacific time, Thursdays at 4:30 p.m. Pacific time. So those are currently my 3 times that I'm streaming. Okay, this is a good question. Koketsu is a question. Why people, when they exercise, don't include their foot, because they play a big part in the ankle. Yeah, that's a great question. A lot of times I think maybe it's not incorporated, like the foot and the ankle, because a lot of people are impatient and they just want to do the thing that they feel is going to get them the results. So it takes a better understanding of a holistic understanding of how everything's connected to want to spend the time and the effort on the feet. In the classes and programs that I teach, we include some kind of ankle or foot drill in every warm-up. And we have classes that are focused on ankle and foot mobility inside our membership. So that is something that we include. Whether people choose to do those classes is kind of on them, but it's in every warm-up, so we do incorporate it because we know that it is important. But spending specific time working ankle and foot mobility and strength can be tough because the progress can be slow. So it can be difficult for people maybe to stay consistent with it if they're not seeing or feeling the progress, because the feet, there's a lot of different tendons and ligaments in there, and it just takes time to make change. It doesn't change as quickly as range of motion and maybe your shoulders or your hips or things like that. So it might be a little more frustrating that way. That might be part of why people don't spend as much time on it. But you make a great point that it is important, and it can affect everything else because you're standing on your feet. That's your connection to the ground. So if you spend time on that, that is really good. Any other questions here? We've been live for 68 minutes. This is a long live today. Well, we've had a good combo of questions here. Training the feet is especially important for runners and those who want to improve their running speed. Absolutely. Yeah, I think if you're a runner, spending time on your foot strength and mobility is key. And especially if, you know, you do trail running or something where you could roll your ankle pretty easily, you want to be prepared by having worked your foot strength and mobility for that. You're going to greatly reduce your injury risk if you do. Abby, you said for foot exercise, you love kettlebell reverse foot raises, best rehab. What's that? I don't know. You're telling me all these exercises I don't know. And now I need to find out what this is. I think there's also, like, people call things different names. Kettlebell reverse. Let's see if this is going to show me what it is. This is kettlebell reverse single leg deadlift, which I think might not be the same thing. Where's the example? Okay, I don't know. This thing didn't show me what it is, but I'm sure it's a great exercise. Any other questions or requests for next week? Sounds like maybe foot and ankle work might be a request here. Ilkor, I'm sorry you can't understand English. I wish there was closed captions on it, but unfortunately I guess there's not. Okay, we got a question here. Mirinal, sorry if I'm not saying that correctly. How to design a workout program based on the 3 body planes if I have to instead of the usual push-pull legs kind of split. You could, I think something you could do if you do a program that is kind of the push-pull kind of split, just adding some rotational exercises. Basic one you can do with the kettlebells and around the body handoff. You know, anything where you're kind of moving across and working your body this way. You could add exercises that are in the transverse plane that add some rotation to your usual routine, and then you get some added benefit. I think, again, people often worry about, like, what's the perfect program in the exact way I need to fit all these things in. That can be really overwhelming. I would just say the most important thing is that you're consistent with exercise. And if you're getting progress, if you're getting benefit and progress from that, keep going, keep doing it. Now, if you're experiencing problems, like you're starting to feel like you have a bad imbalance, you're getting pain or discomfort, then it may be time to make an adjustment. But if you're seeing benefits and progress, then you don't necessarily need to change your routine. Again, there is no perfect routine. There's different ways to do it. And I think if we get too hung up on the perfect routine, you know, they say perfect is the enemy of good enough. Yes, Zephyr asked, you're a world champion, 7-time master of sport kettlebell lifter. That's right. I used to compete in kettlebell sport, so that was really my life for a while. Okay, Abby, kettlebell shin raises. So, like, are you talking about you put the kettlebell on your foot and then you like lift your foot up with the kettlebell to work your shins? Is that what you're doing? Which is a good exercise to strengthen your tibialis and all that. Koketsu, yes, when you work on your ankle, it includes your knee. Yep, that's important. A lot of people don't work on their knee mobility or strength there, and that's key. Yeah, Abby, that's a good one. I like that one. Yeah, Jez, that's a great way to do it. You do a few heel raises when preparing a meal in the kitchen to make your ankles stronger. Multitasking, I love it. I can be found doing that sometimes. If I'm standing in line waiting for something, I'm just doing some calf raises. It's a good way to do it. Yep, Duke, consistency or fun are what matter to you in any routine. Absolutely. I think I don't mean to say that it's, you know, bad if you're thinking about these different details. I think you're being very thoughtful and considerate and trying to figure out what's the best thing to do for my body. And sometimes when we get too concerned about that, it can just get in the way of just doing what we know is helpful for our body, even if it's not, you know, the the perfect routine, because the reality is nobody actually knows what the perfect routine is. You know, different trainers or experts out there say, oh, you need to be training, you know, all 3 planes of motion. It's important to be balanced. And it sounds all like it makes sense, but we don't actually know. Like, we don't have a specific evidence that says this is the best way to train. It really depends, because for every type of training, you're going to find people who it works great for, and then you're going to find exceptions of people who are doing it totally different and getting great results. So there is no one perfect routine out there. South to West asks, what's the worst injury you've ever had or the worst condition you've had to overcome? I've been lucky that I've never had like a really debilitating injury. I would say probably one of the most frustrating injuries was I got a neck injury, and just having, you know, tingling and discomfort for months to years. And that was a frustrating injury, but luckily it wasn't actually too bad. I would say the worst condition I've had to overcome is of my own doing, when I got myself into, like, I had overtrained myself for many years and just got into this place where I experienced kind of a breakdown of my body. I started getting hives when eating different things. I started, my immune system started going haywire. So I got foot fungus. I got an infection in my foot from the fungus. I had gut issues, like really bad bloating, hives. Like I said, I got sick. I got better only to get sick the next week, and I was so exhausted I could barely function in my life. So that's probably the worst condition I've had to overcome. It was, like I said, it was of my own doing over many years, and it was like a wake-up call for me to move in a healthier direction on all levels, because training had really become my identity in a way that was very unhealthy. So I would say that that's probably the worst condition I've had to overcome. And it's been a process over the years, because exercise can be an addiction. It gives you endorphins, kind of like a drug, so it can become an addiction for some of us. So like any addiction, it's a process over time of recommitting to every day to, you know, find a different way and not use that addiction in the way that's unhealthy. The challenge with exercise is we need exercise to be healthy. So it's not like a drug where you just cut it out completely. You need exercise. So it's about every day kind of finding the balance and really listening to the body and what's best for the body, not what the mind wants you to do because it's a coping mechanism. You're welcome, Marina. Let me know if you have any other questions. Zephyr, I'm not sure what your question is. Yeah, Duke said progress, the meaning of progress varies so much. What one person sees as progress is meaningless to someone else. Yeah, it's something I definitely emphasize to the students I work with is, hey, small progress you see from week to week, like that is the exciting progress. That is what leads to that bigger progress down the road. So paying attention to those little signals of progress and signals in our, or progress in our behavior or our approach can be sometimes bigger progress than the actual physical progress that we notice. Yeah, Jez said, as well as getting stronger for my old age, just as important to me is exercising the brain, especially with solo coordination to try and delay possibly dementia or Alzheimer's later life and falls. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a really important part of training that people maybe overlook is your balance, your coordination, staying independent physically as you get older. I think that's something that everybody wants. You know, nobody wants to have trouble walking and you know, be really dependent on other people. Ideally, we want to be that person who people are saying, oh my God, you're 80 and you're amazing, you're doing all these things. So that's an important key to keep in mind for your training as well. Yeah, Abby says, I see what you said about having nervous system fatigue. I read a comment which was an eye-opener. It's when I learned about RIR, REP periodization and slow down working out one muscle group per week. Yeah, I think it's important to recognize that you can have too much exercise, you can have too intensive exercise, and to realize that it doesn't just happen like that, but it's something that happens over time if you continuously push yourself too far. So it's good that you're finding a method to help you regulate that before you get there. Yeah, you're welcome, Duke. Yeah, mental progress more than aesthetics is important to you. I think that's a good way to go. I think, personally, I believe that if you're healthy on the inside, if you're healthy mentally, emotionally, spiritually, I believe it will reflect on the outside aesthetically. I believe it may not necessarily look the way that you have some idea that you should look, or society says you need to look like this or that, but I believe if you're healthy internally, it will reflect on the outside, and that the aesthetic will be pleasing to other people, whatever it is, because your healthiness from the inside shows on the outside. I believe your body wants to take a shape that is healthy for it. Again, this may not always coincide with our idea for what we want to look like. That's definitely something I've struggled with in the past, is thinking I need to look a certain way, and then if I let my body take the shape that's healthiest for it, it will take a shape that's healthy, even if it's not what I thought I wanted to look like, but just coming to the acceptance of like, okay, I appreciate this form of my body, and actually this is where my body is happy and healthy, and that being more important than achieving a specific aesthetic. Yeah, I love that. Duke says he's made more aesthetic muscle building progress the more he relaxes and slows down. Absolutely. Yeah, I could say that I experienced the same thing actually. When I kind of let go of different goals for my training, goals for what I wanted my body to look like, my body actually got to a place that looked more like what I initially wanted it to look like. But I wasn't trying to do it. And when I was trying to look like that, I was going in the opposite direction. So I do think you hit on something that's key, just relaxing and slowing down, trusting in the body's wisdom, trusting in the body to know what's best for it, and following that will usually lead you aesthetically to the place you wanted to go. But it's not what a lot of the fitness world has told you need to do to get somewhere, because we're sold the idea that it's really difficult to get to a good looking aesthetic. You have to suffer and work hard and push yourself 110% in order to have this hot body or whatever. I don't believe that that's actually accurate, because first of all, if you're suffering to get yourself there, again, I think there's a level that's going to be unhealthy on the inside, and that shows on the outside, even if you maybe have a hot bod. But I think if you listen to your body, relax and slow down, you actually get to a healthier place, and the aesthetic will come, but it's not what we're sold about how to get there. Yes, love that, Abby. Philippians 4:13, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. That's right. Zafir, I don't totally understand your question. You said, like, what do you want to say about the world right now? The world needs love. The world needs Jesus. That's what I would say about the world right now. South to West said, I promise I will buy my first kettlebell soon. LOL. Absolutely should buy. What's stopping you, South to West? Do you not know which one to buy, or is it cost, or what's stopping you from buying your first kettlebell? Thanks, Duke. I appreciate it. Yeah, I think we get, there is unfortunately so much of a focus in the fitness world, and I myself have fallen trapped to it many times, on aesthetics and on what we look on the outside, when that is just not that important. Because when you're on your deathbed and you're an old lady or old man, are people going to remember whether you had a hot bod when you were young, or are they going to remember that you were a kind person? Are they going to remember that you were there for them in difficult times? Like, what are they going to remember about you? And it's not likely to be, oh my God, she had such a hot body, that's why I love her so much. South to West, yeah, you said you run a lot and go to a couple weightlifting classes at the gym, so you kind of feel like you're doing enough already. Sounds like you're probably doing enough, but it sounds like you're also interested in kettlebells. Yeah, absolutely, Duke. Healthy mentally and physically is much more attractive than an obsession to aesthetics that no one really cares about. Yep. Maybe that's a good live topic. I don't know what it would be called, but... Okay, guys, I think I'm going to log off here. We've had a nice long live today. If you've been here the whole time, I really appreciate you. And if you showed up at all, I really appreciate you also. Thank you for joining. I'll be live tomorrow, October 17th at 4:30 p.m. Pacific time. If you would like to join me on and learning more about kettlebell solo, I'm going to send you the link here for my 7-day Jumpstart. This will also put you on the mailing list so you have information about it so you can check that out. And otherwise, have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll see you guys on the next one.